Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Send Nutrition Podcast with your hosts Bryan and Peter today. And this is episode 79 and it is titled, Do Horses Really Need Grain? How are you, Peter?
Bryan, amazing. It's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. You're really going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons here with this podcast today.
TGIF, yes. And it is winter and we see a lot of people adding more calories to the diet due to this cold weather. And we have this widely held opinion that horses really, really do need grain. And this is brought about of many years of feeding, way back to even the Roman Empire, I think is when they just started feeding grain just as a calorie source.
So it's older than Moses.
There's your line.
for our religious buffs out there, yeah. older than Moses. But you're right. It's something that's been out there for a long time. And if you ask a person, well, why do you feed grain? Look, I reckon probably 5 people out of 10 would just say, well, because that's what we've done, or it puts on weight on a horse. They don't realize the side effects, the negative side effects if fed too much grain, and you know, maybe they're getting the symptoms, but they're not knowing what's causing it. And it could be that it's a grain overload.
Yeah, 100%, Peter. A horse is a non-ruminant herbivore, which means they're a hindgut fermenter, and that is where they ferment all their fiber. The portion of fiber in grain is very small. So when you look at the horse's physiology, the horse is not totally set up to digest this in the most efficient way.
Yeah, so it's a little bit like flirting with fire in a way. And what Bryan's basically said in that statement is that, yeah, when you do require the extra calories, you can reach out for the grain, whether it's the oats or even like a commercial sort of pelleted feed, but it does go down a different route. It goes obviously through the small intestine, where if too much goes into the small intestine, it gets into the hindgut where it's not supposed to be, and then you have a myriad of problems occurring. And we'll go over which sort of signs and symptoms to look out for where you might be feeding too much grain, and obviously hence your horse is suffering with symptoms.
Yeah, and when we backtrack to why grain is chosen by many horse owners is because of that concentrated amount of calories. But as Peter just touched, you have to look at your volume so you're not overdoing that starch content, which is digested in the small intestine, but the damage can be done if that starch makes it into the hindgut or that large intestine, and then we will go through those issues that can develop. So firstly, what is the amount of grain that it can be safely digested? So they look at the amounts in starch. So 1 gram of starch per kg body weight. So for example, plain oats at a level of around 1 kg, 1.2 kgs, any more may result in starch overspilling into the large intestine. So it's a really fine line. In terms of a horse that is not in work or in light work, should we be feeding a grain? And then also look at your feed bag as well, because all the pre-mixed commercial feeds, they may contain an element of grain. We don't, and that is one of the reasons.
Yeah, and this is why there's that perception of, well, like you need to break your feed up into 2-3 meals. And if you ask a regular person why that is, it's more because a lot of the diets are grain based, and as Bryan said, you can only a horse can only sort of cop/absorb sort of 1.2, 1.3 kilograms of grain in any one sitting. So if you're feeding one meal at 3 kilograms and you have a horse that just, gulps down their food, highly likely there's going to be problems there. It's flirting with fire. So as Bryan touched on, the grain-free pellet, also with the lupin pellet, they're high fiber products. So what happens is it's absolutely safe to feed oats with that product, because what you're doing is with the 30-35% fiber, you're diluting the starch in the oats. So you're actually reducing that starch content substantially, where it does get absorbed a lot better. Obviously it does still go through the small intestine, but some of that fiber is going through the hindgut, whereas it's a much better mix to obviously to stop those issues. But also on the flip side too, there's not going to be those insulin spikes and lows. So when you give kids cordial and sweets and chocolates and things, they get really rowdy. It's the same with horses with the sugars and starches in those grains.
Yeah, that temperament side effect is massively underrated, we believe, and you can really influence a horse's behavior in what you are feeding them. And furthermore to the starch digestion, so horses that are in heavy work can adapt to these high starch meals up to 2 kgs, like safely, 2.5, but you are playing that risky game in terms of when you back off the work, the digestion, all that calorie required is not at that upper limit. So then are you overdoing your grain and starch sources, and then that in turn is not being burnt off and then turns to fat or a less fit horse?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Brian. So I think what what our listeners need to look at is, all right, well, what's your goal with your horse? Do you have a broodmare, that's in foal with a foal at foot, or do you have a performance horse that you're exercising 7 days a week? So rather than just throwing a blanket over everything and just doing the same for the broodmare and doing the same for the performance horse, you've got to break them up into individuals, as we sort of constantly say on this podcast. So once you work out, all right, well, this horse is doing this horse is doing that, then you know exactly what grain sort of aspect you need, what type of grain, how much of that grain, whether you can do it in one meal, up to the 1.2 kilograms, or you might need to break it up into 3 meals if you're feeding 3.6 kilograms. So first step is have a look at what you're doing with your horse, and then look at, does your horse need supplementation? So just because it's winter, you might have a very obese horse, you might not need that grain at all. You might have a really good hay, or you've still got some pasture around. That horse might be okay with pasture and hay, or pasture or hay, with a vitamin mineral supplement to correct the deficiencies in that pasture or hay. So don't think just because it's winter and you got a very fat horse, you need to feed it grain just for the sake of feeding it grain.
Yeah, horses can survive on a nice nutrient profile with plenty of fiber, plenty of long stem roughage. This really promotes a really good digestive health and movement of that digestible and indigestible fiber throughout their system, and that prevents all sorts of conditions, including colic. Also, when we were researching this topic for the podcast, there's a few studies out there that are focusing on the starch amounts in a horse's diet, and we came across this one, and I'll link it in the show notes, and it was a recent study. It had as little as 1.3 grams of starch per kg body weight. So for an average horse, that's about half a kg of starch. Can cause inflammation and the appearance of, this might be a little bit sciencey, bacterial lipopolysaccharide and a bacterial lactate in the blood. So in layman terms, it is causing a disturbance in that hindgut, that starch level, and day after day, time after time, it's just a little bit more riskier way of feeding if you are overdoing those grains.
Yeah, that's really well explained, Brian. So as an example to our listeners out there, you might be sort of asking, well, how many calories does a horse need in a day to maintain weight? So the answer is, for about a 450 kilogram horse, you need about 15,000 calories a day. So you're probably asking, well, what's 15,000 calories? A biscuit of hay, give and take about, a small biscuit, 1 kilogram to 1.5, will give you roughly 2,000 calories. So when I say, you should feed at least 2% of the horse's body weight in hay or pasture, that's why that sort of 7 to 9 kilograms of hay or a good pasture will hit those recommended levels for that horse to maintain body weight. So if you're only feeding 4 kilograms of hay, or you've got really bad pasture, this is where you need to add the extra calories. And we did fail to mention, Brian, just before, you can get calories in through fat as well, and that's where our sen oil comes in. So as an example, 100 ml of oil, of the sen oil, 100 ml is around about 300 to 350 grams of oats. So it's very energy dense. You don't have the energy spikes. You don't have the erratic behavior. You're also not adding to the starch and sugar contribution of your overall diet. So reaching out for that fat supplement like the sen oil is a much safer, is a much better idea than reaching out for the grain-based oats or even pony pellets or those low nutritional feeds that are very cheap.
And that's very well explained, Peter, because when you look at a horse in heavy work, that calorie requirement is really important, because you're trying to get the best performance, you're trying to maintain their condition. You want that hindgut to be in the best condition it can be, and also look after their temperament and cope with the stresses of travel. So there's many different things, and if you can base their diet around forage, that adequate amount of roughage, and then balance it up, and then control your grain source. So we really look at oats as the superior grain source due to its digestibility. It actually has around 10 to 13% fiber levels in it as well, but its starch level is about 50%. Comparing this to
44, Brian, to 44. Be exact. Don't bash it over the head that hard.
In that ballpark. But when you look at corn and you look at barley, they're nearly double. So they're 70, 60%, but their starch is a little bit less digestible. So you're just on that end of higher risk. We want to lower your risk so you can concentrate on your training and looking after your horse and getting to know them as an individual. And then you can really control that grain ration when you feed a diet that's high in fiber, especially with your vitamin mineral profile added, that's not overdone in grain as well. And that's what we look at in the Sen feed program. And then even on days off, you might want to limit your grain and lower those calories so your horse can maintain its fitness and its condition. But then also, it's better for the hindgut environment as well.
Yeah, that's extremely well summarized. Bryan, you did touch on there, obviously, with high performance horses. So as an example for the calorie needs of a performance horse, we said sort of 15,000 calories a day to maintain body weight / condition. A horse in heavy work 5 days a week, 6 days a week needs double that. And that's the equivalent of about 8 to 10 biscuits of hay.
Yeah, wow.
So I don't know many people that are feeding 8 to 10 biscuits of hay, and I don't know many performance horses that are out grazing on lush pasture sort of 24/7. So that's where that oats that Bryan mentioned, and it might be 2 kilograms, 3 kilograms, even up to 4 kilograms, as long as it's split over a couple of meals.
Yeah.
You add your fat, obviously, content like the Sen oil into that. You add a high fiber pellet like the lupin pellet or the grain free, or even both of them, and that's where you get that balanced diet that we at Sen obviously have balanced out for our clients. So you don't have to add a little bit of this from one company, add this from another company, and then add a powdered vitamin mineral supplement, and you spend half a day on a balancing website trying to balance out your calories, your too much iron, not enough zinc. We've done all the groundwork for you guys. So it's just, the work's done. You just have to adapt it to your horse, to what work you're doing with the horse, and you don't need to guess. Guessing obviously has its ups and downs, but no feed company, if they're honest with you, they haven't designed their feeds to be fed with another company's feeds. So it's easier when you stick to one company, because at least if they have balanced your diet, it's going to be in a right amounts and it's balanced. Yeah,
and here at Sen, we don't hide any grains or grain byproducts in our bagged feeds. We're completely grain free. And and if you are looking at some bags and they got some cool words or cool energy or grain byproduct free, just take a closer look, because 9 times out of 10 it will have something in there. And what we're trying to do is provide the best products that are always available. So we're not just in the seasons, we're not substituting other ingredients just because it's a seasonal ingredient. We've got a fixed recipe that doesn't change throughout the year, and we support the Australian farmers as well, and we are really proud of that, to just keep it all in this country. But what we have found in terms of a performance horse is controlling those grain levels. You're going to have many benefits around that body system of the horse.
Yeah, we get a bit upset at oats getting sort of bashed over the head about being, it's caused my horse to tie up, or it's colicked off oats. And I think we've done a podcast previously, or might have mentioned something about it, but I'm happy to sort of give my 2 cents worth. It's not the oats that's causing the problems. It's the other commercial grain-based feeds that you're feeding 4 or 5 or 6 kilograms of on top of the kilo or 2 kilograms of oats. So what I'm trying to say is that if you've got 3 kilograms of oats, but then you've diluted those 3 kilograms of oats with 2 kilograms of the grain-free or 2 kilograms of the lupin pellet, you don't have that starch, and that oats won't be detrimental to your horse because you're diluting the starch with the fiber.
Yeah, 100%, Peter. So furthermore to grain, it is not required in a horse's diet that has a metabolic syndrome such as the insulin resistance. And all those syndromes can be really negatively affected when there is some grain in the diet, because of the sensitivity of the horse to this, and it'll come out in a range of symptoms. Also, this may be a bit surprising to you, but grains should be minimized or even eliminated in a growing horse, because recent research, and I'll actually link another journal article, and it's a recent one, is there is a known connection developing with that developmental orthopedic disease. So the growing structures of a young horse, if you can base it around a lot of fiber, a lot of good quality protein, not overdoing it, but minimizing the grain, so then they can grow at a more steady rate. Lastly, we can touch on these inactive and pleasure horses. They do really well without grain in that diet, especially their temperament, and maintaining a healthier weight without the grain, it's just going to be better on their body systems.
Yeah, that's extremely well summarized. I think the industry's gone down that grain way because Australia is abundant in grains, and I think the feed companies obviously, whether it's through drought or whatever, it's gone towards that grain because it's abundant, it's cheap. You can get great calories out of it, but you got to look at the side effects of it as well. And look, horses are vegetarians; they're born and designed to ferment fiber. We're not knocking grain on the head, but you got to be really careful. And in terms of, you're going to add the grain and you're going to put on sort of weight, but it's not really muscle. So it's like us eating Maccas and like we want to put on weight, but we're getting fat, but we're getting an unhealthy fat rather than eating probably, more steadily the right amounts of protein, right amounts of fiber, right amount of sugar and starch, and doing it gradually in a safe way. So it does take a bit more work. To produce fiber feeds is a lot more expensive to produce grain feeds. It's not as economical to produce a high fiber feed. It's like when you go shopping in Woolies or Coles and you're looking for organic stuff, it's a lot more expensive than the general, whether even it's sort of fruit and veg, it's a lot more expensive. And there's a reason for that because the cost of production is a lot more too.
Yeah, that's well explained, Peter. And the Send Feed program, we have a balanced nutrition profile, which you can deep dive. It's available on the website for your specific horse. But if you have any doubts about the volumes or what is required in your horse's diet, because they're all individuals, don't be afraid to reach out. There's many channels of social media, our website, or even our phone here in the office.
As Bryan mentioned, we have got all the diets for the different horses and different disciplines as well. So if you jump on our website there, we've got the balanced diet for performance horses, for stallions, for brood mares, foal at foot, young foals. So it's all there. We do consults over the phone as well. So most of the time, Bryan and myself are here. I'd like to make a point that horses that require grain sometimes can even be brood mares with a foal at foot, as long as they have the fiber aspect with it. That's the point I want to sort of ram home. Don't be scared to use fat instead of grain. It might cost a little bit more, but if it's going to be for the benefit of your horse and welfare and long-term health, you're not going to upset that gut microbiome, as Bryan mentioned before. You won't have to be reaching out then, for the vet in case you did make a mistake and feed too much in one sitting. There's just... What I'm trying to say is there's a safer way to do it without reaching out for the grain unless you're feeding a balanced diet.
And what we'll do is we'll end with this listener question. And we're really grateful for Brooklyn Gregory to take the time out to leave a voice message for us in this new link. And that link will be at the bottom of these show notes. So anyone that would like to leave a testimonial or has a question about anything to do with nutrition, feel free to listen. And if we do feature it on the podcast, we'll send you out a merch pack. And let's see what the question was.
Hey, Bryan. Hey, Peter. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the Send brand. My horses love it. My dogs love it. I love it. We just can't fault it. We love it. But I just have a question regarding sand in the horse's gut. I recently had a fecal egg count done for my horse as well as a sand test, and it come back saying that he had sand present in his stomach. So just looking at what I can do, what I can add to his feed to prevent this and to cure it. Thank you.
And thanks, Brooklyn, for that. And we're really grateful for your support, and we see you around on social media a lot, and you're a really good supporter of the Send brand. And this is a really good question in terms of horses that are on sand paddocks and what they require as maintenance. So in a nutshell, psyllium husks are used to help move that sand out of the gut, and they're a really good natural ingredient to add to your horse's feed to really help lower the risk of irritation and pain from the sand that is in the gut it can easily contribute to bloating, diarrhea, or colic. So what we advise, around 50 grams per 100 kg body weight, probably around 4 or 5 days every month as a maintenance for your horse. And it's just simply added, and just Google psyllium husks and there'll be a myriad of companies that sell it. You can dampen it down, and they're made from the gel-coated seeds from a particular plant or shrub-like herb. It was called the Plantago ovata, and this grows worldwide. And the husk of this has been derived and used successfully by horse owners to help lower that risk of sand colic and to regularly clean out. So maybe set an alarm in your calendar to do it once a week per month. And it's a fantastic little little trick for that sand in the gut and to help prevent any conditions from developing. So.
Yep. Yeah, best of all, Bryan, it's really well summarized. It's natural as well, so there's no side effects. If you did feed too much, you're not going to hurt the horse. So it's a great supplement to do as Bryan just recommended.
Yeah, and I think that's about lunchtime now, Pete.
Let's get the gin ready, Bryan.
Yeah. So yeah, no, thanks for everyone. Yeah, leave a voice recording if you'd like anything answered, and yeah, we'll be back with you guys very soon and next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.